Discipline does not begin with action, it begins with understanding. Most people think they struggle with discipline because they're weak, unfocused, or easily distracted. But the truth is far more human and far more hopeful. People don't fail because they lack willpower. They fail because their why isn't strong enough to stand up against the pressures of life. When you understand your reason, your true, emotional, personal reason, discipline stops feeling like a burden and starts becoming a responsibility you willingly carry. Think about the moments in life when you showed discipline without even trying. Maybe it was staying up late to finish something meaningful, or protecting someone you care about, or pushing through exhaustion because you believed the outcome mattered. Notice how, in those moments, discipline didn't feel forced. You weren't dragging yourself forward. You were pulled by something larger than comfort. That is the power of a clear why. It acts like gravity, holding your focus in place even when everything around you tries to pull you off course. Most people set goals based on what they want, but they rarely dig deeper into why they want it. They say, I want to lose weight, but the real reason is, I want to feel confident again. Or I want to live long enough to see my kids grow up. They say, I want to start a business, but the real reason is, I want to prove to myself that I'm capable. Or I want to build something that lasts beyond me. The deeper emotional layer is where discipline is born. It's not the surface level goal that drives you. It's the meaning behind the goal that sustains you. When people say they feel stuck, overwhelmed, or inconsistent, it's usually because they're trying to push themselves forward using force. But discipline doesn't grow from force, it grows from alignment. When your actions align with your values, discipline stops being a fight. It becomes a natural extension of who you are becoming. You no longer say, I have to do this, but instead, I get to do this because it brings me closer to the life I believe in. Imagine a person trying to climb a mountain. If they climb only because someone told them it's a good idea, they will give up the moment the path becomes steep. But if they climb because there is something on the other side that fills them with purpose, family, freedom, meaning, identity, they will push through storms that would break someone else. The mountain isn't easier for them, their why is simply stronger. This is why clarity is more powerful than motivation. Motivation is emotional caffeine. It wakes you up for a moment, gets your energy moving, but fades quickly. A clear why is different. It is a long, lasting source of strength. It becomes the invisible engine behind your decisions. It turns discipline into something you protect rather than something you resist. To discover this why, you must be willing to be honest with yourself. Sit with the question, what is the real reason I want this? And not the reason you think sounds good. Not the reason you tell others to appear confident or ambitious, the real reason, the one that sits quietly underneath the surface. Sometimes that reason is painful. Sometimes it's rooted in an old wound or a childhood moment when you felt small. Sometimes it's born from fear, other times from hope. Whatever it is, lean into it, because if it's real, it will fuel you. Once people connect with their why, their discipline transforms. Suddenly waking up early isn't torture, it's an act of commitment. Exercising isn't a chore, it's a form of gratitude. Studying, working, practicing, all become expressions of who they want to be. The task doesn't change, the meaning does, and that shift in meaning changes everything. People often ask how to stay disciplined when life gets hard. The answer is that discipline isn't something you fight for every day. It's something you return to every day. You return to your why, remind yourself of it, strengthen your connection to it, and allow it to pull you back into alignment. Discipline doesn't collapse when you fall off track. It collapses when you forget why you started. Remembering is the most powerful way to reset. There will be days when you don't feel like acting, days when doubt whispers louder than confidence, when distractions feel easier than effort. On those days, your why becomes the anchor. It calms the storm inside you. It reminds you that discomfort is temporary, but regret is permanent. It reminds you that fulfillment is built through consistency, not convenience. It reminds you that the person you want to become is shaped most in the moments when you don't feel like showing up. The greatest discipline in the world doesn't come from toughness, it comes from clarity. When you understand your why deeply enough, discipline becomes less about resisting temptation and more about protecting what matters. It becomes a promise to yourself, one anchored in meaning, fueled by purpose, and strengthened by the belief that your life is worth the effort. Discipline is often misunderstood as a grand gesture, a massive burst of effort that suddenly transforms a person's life, but real discipline doesn't come from one big moment. It comes from the small choices we make every day, choices so subtle and routine that most people never notice their power. The truth is, consistency beats intensity. A small commitment practiced daily is far more transformative than a giant effort that happens once and never again. Think about the people you admire, the ones who seem grounded, focused, reliable. They aren't extraordinary because they do dramatic things. They're extraordinary because they do ordinary things with unwavering regularity. They show up when it's boring. They follow through when no one is watching. They practice when others have stopped. The secret isn't that they're stronger or smarter. It's that they value small daily actions enough to stay loyal to them. The challenge with small commitments is that they often feel too small to matter. When someone decides to read for 5 minutes a day, or walk for 10 minutes, or meditate for 2, the mind quickly dismisses it. We crave big results, and we assume big results require big actions, but the mind forgets that habits are built not from intensity, but from repetition. A single drop of water seems insignificant, yet over time it can carve valleys into stone. Daily actions work the same way. Their power is invisible at first, but unstoppable in the long run. People often wait for the perfect moment to change, the new year, the new month, the new week. But discipline doesn't begin with perfect timing. It begins with imperfect action. Starting small is not weakness, it is wisdom. A person who can keep a tiny promise to themselves builds a foundation far stronger than the person who makes massive promises they can never sustain. Small commitments create internal trust, and once you trust yourself, discipline becomes natural. Imagine someone trying to get healthier. They sign up for a 2-hour workout plan, buy supplements, follow a strict meal prep routine. For a week, they go all in. But eventually, the intensity becomes overwhelming. A single missed day turns into two become a week, and the person feels like a failure. Not because they lacked the ability, but because they tried to climb a mountain in one leap. Had they started with 10 minutes of movement each day, they might have quietly become the person they were trying so hard to force themselves into becoming. The same is true in every area of life. A writer who commits to 2 pages a day becomes an author long before the person waiting for inspiration. A student who reviews 1 chapter for 15 minutes each night ends up more prepared than the one who crams for hours. A professional who spends 5 minutes each morning organizing their priorities becomes far more productive than the one overwhelmed by chaos. Small daily actions compound, they turn into momentum, and momentum is the most powerful force behind discipline. But consistency requires humility. It requires the patience to embrace slow progress when the world tells you to chase fast results. It requires the strength to accept that growth will not always feel exciting. In fact, most of the time, it will feel ordinary. And that's the point. Discipline is not built in extraordinary moments. It's built in the quiet ones. The ones where nothing seems to be happening. The ones where you choose reliability over results. There will be days when even small commitments feel hard. Days when fatigue, stress, or doubt whisper reasons to skip. But the beauty of small actions is that they are hard to avoid. 5 minutes is manageable even on the worst days, and when you show up even at half capacity, you reinforce the identity of someone who follows through. You choose integrity over excuses, you choose direction over distraction, and this choice, repeated daily, transforms you. Over time, small commitments evolve. 5 minutes becomes 10, 10 becomes 20, not because you force it, but because the identity you've built through consistency naturally expands. When you no longer fight yourself to begin, growth becomes inevitable. This is the quiet miracle of small discipline. It changes the way you see yourself. You stop viewing goals as distant dreams and start experiencing them as inevitable outcomes of who you are becoming. Most people overestimate what they can do in a week and underestimate what they can do in a year. A year of small commitments can change a life in ways that feel almost unrecognizable. But it begins with the courage to be consistent rather than dramatic. It begins with valuing progress over perfection. It begins with the understanding that every great transformation is simply a collection of tiny steps taken repeatedly. Discipline rooted in small actions is sustainable because it works with human nature, not against it. You don't need extraordinary strength to take a small step. You just need honesty, intention, and a willingness to begin. And once you begin, the journey unfolds naturally. The power is not in the size of the step, but in the promise behind it. Your life will not change because of one grand decision. It will change because of the hundreds of small decisions you make, everyday decisions that quietly reshape your habits, your mindset, your identity. Small daily commitments are not just techniques for building discipline. They are the building blocks of becoming the person you were always meant to be. One of the greatest misunderstandings about self-discipline is the belief that it comes from sheer willpower. People think they fail because they aren't strong enough to resist distractions or temptations. But the truth is that even the strongest, most focused individuals don't rely on willpower alone. They rely on design. They shape their environment in a way that supports the person they want to become, rather than the habits they're trying to leave behind. And this is where most people get it wrong. They keep fighting the same battles in an environment built to make them lose. The human mind is not designed to constantly resist temptation. It is designed to take the easiest path, the most accessible option, the most immediate reward. This doesn't make us weak. It makes us human. So instead of trying to overpower instinct, discipline asks us to outsmart it. If you remove the obstacles that trigger old habits, you no longer have to battle them. If you remove temptations from your surroundings, you no longer have to waste energy resisting them. Discipline becomes less about self-control and more about self-awareness. Imagine someone trying to eat healthier while keeping their kitchen filled with junk food. Every time they pass the pantry, they fight an internal war. Every passing thought becomes a small battle. Eventually, they lose not because they're flawed, but because their environment is working against their goals. Now imagine if they simply removed the junk food and replaced it with healthier options. Suddenly, the battle disappears. The decision becomes easier, not because they became stronger, but because the environment became smarter. This is true in every area of life. If you want to read more but your phone is always within reach, the phone will win. If you want to wake up early but your room is dark and warm, the bed will win. If you want to focus but your desk is cluttered with distractions, chaos will win. Discipline doesn't require you to fight these forces. It requires you to engineer around them. The most disciplined people aren't the ones with iron willpower. They're the ones who design their lives to make good habits easier and bad habits harder. They lay out their workout clothes the night before because they know mornings are hard. They leave their phone in another room because they know temptation is powerful. They turn off notifications because they understand that technology is designed to steal attention. They are not superhuman, they are simply intentional. There is a quiet wisdom in making the right choice the easy choice. People often underestimate how much environment shapes behavior. We think we act from pure intention, but our surroundings constantly influence our decisions, often without us noticing. When you walk into a tidy room, you feel calmer. When you sit at a clean desk, you feel more organized. When you open a fridge full of fresh food, you feel more capable of making better decisions. The environment speaks to the mind before the mind speaks to you. The problem is that people expect discipline to show up in moments of weakness. They wait until the craving hits, until the distraction appears, until the pressure becomes overwhelming. By then, it's too late. Discipline is not built in the moment of temptation. It's built in the moments before, not when you are resisting the wrong thing, but when you are preparing for the right thing. Preparation is discipline in disguise. If you want to study more, make your study space inviting. If you want to exercise more, remove friction from the routine. If you want to build a business, build a workspace that inspires clarity instead of confusion. If you want to reduce screen time, create physical distance between yourself and the devices that consume your attention. Not because you lack strength, but because you understand your tendencies. The most disciplined people are not the ones who ignore their weaknesses. They are the ones who design their lives around them. There's a humility in recognizing that your environment affects you. It means accepting that you are not above temptation, not immune to distraction, not untouchable by habit. And that's okay. Discipline is not about being invincible. It's about being realistic. It's about acknowledging that life is easier when the things that pull you away from your goals are removed or minimized. You don't have to fight everything. You don't have to carry the weight of constant resistance. You can make the path lighter. The real transformation happens when you begin to see your environment as a partner in your progress rather than a passive backdrop. Your surroundings can either encourage your best self or strengthen your worst habits. The choice isn't just about what you do, it's about what you allow around you. Discipline becomes sustainable when you remove the need to fight for it every day. You set up your life in a way where good decisions don't drain your energy, they support it. This is the power of removing temptation instead of fighting it. It frees your mental space, conserves your emotional energy, and allows your focus to be used for growth rather than survival. When your environment aligns with your goals, discipline feels less like a struggle and more like a natural rhythm. And once that rhythm begins, everything in life becomes a little simpler, a little clearer, and far more possible. Accountability is one of the most underestimated forces in human behavior. We often think discipline is a solo journey, something we must build entirely on our own, powered by internal strength and unwavering focus. But the truth is, people rise higher when someone else is watching, not because they fear judgment, but because they feel responsible. Human beings are wired for connection. We respond to expectations. We thrive when we know someone cares whether we show up or not. Accountability isn't a weakness, it's a catalyst. There is a quiet shift that happens when you make a commitment privately versus when you make it publicly. A private commitment can be easily negotiated with. Your mind knows it can bend the rules, adjust the deadline, or convince itself that tomorrow is a reasonable substitute for today. But when your commitment becomes visible to someone else, everything changes. Suddenly, it's not just about your comfort anymore. It's about your integrity. It's about being the kind of person who keeps their word, not just for themselves, but for the people who believe in them. Think about the last time you promised someone you'd be somewhere at a certain time. You likely showed up, even if you were tired, busy, or unmotivated. Why? Because someone else expected you, someone else trusted you, someone else relied on your presence. This is the power of accountability. It turns discipline into something relational. It adds weight to your promises. And human beings honor what feels meaningful. When people try to build discipline alone, they often fall into cycles of inconsistency. Not because they lack commitment, but because they lack reinforcement. It's difficult to push yourself when no one sees the effort. It's easy to let go when no one will notice. But when you create accountability, when you invite someone into your progress, you give your discipline a backbone. Accountability can take many forms. For some, it is a friend who checks in every morning. For others, it is a mentor or colleague who tracks progress. Sometimes it's a community, a group of people striving towards similar goals. And sometimes accountability comes from something as simple as writing your goals on a board where you see them every day. visible, unavoidable, undeniable. The important thing is that the commitment exists outside your mind. It has a life of its own. There's a reason why people perform better with coaches, trainers, partners, or teams. When someone else stands beside you physically or mentally, you dig deeper. You hold yourself to a higher standard. You push through discomfort because you don't want to let them down, and in that process, something remarkable happens. You start to realize you don't want to let yourself down either. Accountability becomes a mirror that shows you what you are capable of. But accountability isn't just about pressure. At its best, it is about support. It is about being reminded that you are not alone. It is about someone saying, "I believe you can do this," especially on the days you don't believe it yourself. Discipline grows stronger when people feel encouraged, when they feel seen, when they know someone is paying attention. Accountability creates belonging, and belonging creates resilience. There is a moment in every journey when motivation fades, when the initial excitement dissolves into routine, when doubt whispers louder than ambition. These are the moments where accountability matters most. A simple check-in can reignite commitment. A simple question, "How's it going?" can pull you back on track. A simple reminder that someone is waiting for your update can shift your energy from avoidance to action. Accountability brings you back to your purpose when you stray too far from it, and it works in both directions. When you hold someone else accountable, you strengthen your own discipline. You become more mindful of your actions because you understand how they influence others. You begin to see discipline not just as a personal expectation, but as a shared value. When you support someone in their goals, you naturally become more dedicated to your own. You create an environment where follow-through is normal, where consistency is respected, where showing up becomes part of the culture. Accountability also introduces honesty into the journey. When you share your progress with someone, you must face the truth of your actions. You can no longer hide behind excuses that only you hear. You begin to confront your patterns, you notice your tendencies. And through that awareness, discipline evolves. You grow not by judging yourself, but by understanding yourself. The most disciplined people in the world rarely work alone. They surround themselves with people who challenge them, people who question them, people who expect greatness from them. Not perfection, just effort, consistency, and integrity. Accountability doesn't demand flawless performance. It demands commitment, it demands honesty, it demands that you keep coming back even after setbacks. In the end, accountability is not about dependence, it is about alignment. It aligns your actions with your intentions. It aligns your identity with your goals. It aligns your behavior with the future you want to build. You are more disciplined when you are connected to others, not because they control you, but because they remind you of who you want to be. And sometimes that reminder is all it takes to keep going. One of the greatest obstacles to self-discipline is the belief that you must be perfect. People quit their goals not because they lack the ability, but because they think one mistake means the entire effort is ruined. They break their routine once and assume they've failed. They miss a day and convince themselves they're starting from zero again. But discipline isn't the pursuit of perfection. It's the practice of returning. It's the quiet commitment to keep going, even when the journey gets messy, uneven, or imperfect. The world glorifies flawless execution. We celebrate those who seem consistent every day, those who appear unstoppable. But what we don't see is the hidden truth. Even the most disciplined people have off days. They stumble, they fall behind, they lose focus. The difference is that they don't shame themselves into quitting. They simply begin again. They understand that discipline lives in the continuation, not the perfection. Progress grows through repetition, not through a flawless streak. Think about a child learning to walk. They fall constantly, yet no one expects perfection from them. We cheer every attempt, we encourage every new step. We celebrate the effort, not the execution. Somewhere along the way, adults forget this. We hold ourselves to standards that leave no room for being human. We forget that growth requires grace. When you celebrate progress, something powerful happens. You begin to see discipline as a journey instead of a test. You start noticing the small victories, waking up 10 minutes earlier, choosing focus over distraction one more time than yesterday, saying no to one temptation that used to control you. These may seem small, but they are evidence that you are moving forward, evidence that you are becoming stronger, evidence that you are honoring the person you want to become. Discipline thrives on identity. When you see yourself as someone who tries, someone who improves, someone who is committed even imperfectly, you act in alignment with that identity. But when you label yourself as someone who always messes up or can't stay consistent, the identity becomes a barrier. You begin to fulfill the story you tell yourself. This is why celebrating progress matters. It reshapes your internal narrative. It rewrites who you believe you are. There is a misconception that celebrating small wins makes you complacent. In reality, it does the opposite. Recognition fuels motivation. Acknowledging progress signals to your brain that the effort is worthwhile. It reinforces the behavior. It builds momentum. Momentum is everything. A small win today increases your willingness to try again tomorrow. A string of small wins eventually becomes a habit, and habits once formed carry you even when motivation fades. Too often, people focus only on what they haven't done yet, how far they still need to go, how big their goals are, how slow their progress feels. But looking only at the gap blinds you to the gains, and when you don't see gains, discipline feels like a burden rather than a privilege. Imagine climbing a mountain and never turning around to see how high you've already climbed. You'd feel exhausted, defeated, maybe even ready to quit. But when you stop to look back, the view reminds you why you started. It reminds you of your effort, your courage, your growth. That reminder strengthens you for the rest of the climb. Celebrating progress also teaches patience. People want transformation overnight. They want fast results, instant change, dramatic shifts. But real discipline doesn't operate on speed. It operates on consistency. The most meaningful progress often happens slowly, quietly, almost invisibly until one day the results are undeniable. Patience allows you to stay steady long enough for the results to reveal themselves. It also teaches resilience. When you acknowledge progress, even during setbacks, you train yourself to rebound faster. You learn that missing one day is not the end. Losing focus does not erase your work. A setback is simply a moment, not a story. You realize you are allowed to recover. You are allowed to realign. You are allowed to begin again without guilt or self-criticism. This resilience makes discipline sustainable. Most importantly, celebrating progress anchors your journey in compassion. You learn to treat yourself with the same patience you offer others. You understand that growth requires space. You begin to speak to yourself in ways that encourage, rather than sabotage. When you talk to yourself like someone who is worthy of effort, not someone who must be flawless, you create an internal environment where discipline can actually flourish. At the end of the day, discipline is not about performing perfectly. It's about practicing consistently. It's about choosing improvement over idealism. It's about noticing how far you've come even when the road ahead feels long. It's about recognizing that every small action is a vote for the future you are building. The person who celebrates progress becomes unstoppable not because they never fail, but because failure never convinces them to stop. They know discipline is not a finish line but a lifestyle, not a test to be passed but a muscle to be strengthened. Not a demand for perfection, but an invitation to grow. And when you see it that way, discipline becomes less of a struggle and more of a relationship, one built on honesty, effort, and appreciation for every step you take, no matter how small.